part of our origin story as a company. Like I got really tired of working in design studios where at that time the uniform was, you had to wear, Doc Martens and biker jackets
Right.
in order to, and severe glasses, in order for someone to take you seriously as a designer and, and listen to, REM and, I don't know, Depeche Mode and Annie Lennox or what,
Sure.
and I listened to all those things too. And,
Yeah.
I went to art school. I've got Doc Martens, you know what I mean? But
I was
it
gonna say I do
wasn't all
too.
of me.
So everyone, I am Lee McKnight Jr. I'm the VP of Sales for RSW US, outsourced business development for ad agencies of all types, and this is Cut to the Chase. It's our interview series that delivers brief but impactful views from ad agency principals on growth strategies and the challenges that come with it in today's weird, evolving landscape. I'm happy to have Daren Bascome, Managing Director and Founder of Proverb. Welcome, Daren. How are you?
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Lee. I've been excited and looking forward to this for some time. So
Awesome.
thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
of course. Of course. Me too. And I guess, well, first of all, you are located in Boston, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So our office is in the South End
Okay.
of Boston, which is one of the historic neighborhoods
Right.
downtown.
Excellent. Yeah, and I want to get back to that for sure. I did have one question that I did not ask you to be prepared for, but we usually kind of like to do a little icebreaker. This could backfire on me. We'll just see how it goes. But what I like to ask, as my screen there we go. Here's the question. Would you rather go hang gliding with the cast of Jersey Shore, the reality show, or answer an RFP?
Oh,
Does that even make
I'm
sense?
I'm gonna go with RFP.
Yeah,
I've watched Jersey Shore over many many years, and
I made it too hard for
yeah, and
you.
don't have a big desire to go back there.
What's wrong with the Jersey Shore? Are you kidding me?
No, I don't think anyone would. Yeah, I usually try to do something just insane, and I think you're the third to say RFP, but that one was particularly difficult because I would have also chosen RFP on that one. Okay, ice is broken. So I want to talk about Proverb, but for folks watching, maybe if we could give us just a little bit about your background prior to Proverb.
Sure, yeah. So prior to founding Proverb, I really cut my teeth working in the world of exhibit design. And so I worked on a firm that planned and produced permanent museum exhibits all over the world. So I got to work on things like the National Museum of Australia, the aquariums in Barcelona and in Taiwan, the
Wow.
American Jazz Museum in Kansas City, Experience Music Project in Seattle. And part of what's really interesting about that work is, you start out by talking to someone like yourself who's oftentimes a subject matter expert, and who may even know too much about a particular subject. And it's really
Right.
sort of, how do we get you to winnow the things that you've learned, over the last 30 years,
Sure.
down to two or three, and then how do we talk about those two or three in a way that's meaningful to, a 7-year-old and someone with a master's degree, and then how do you take that and turn it into a story, and then how do you get all these disciplines to tell that story?
Right.
Writers, filmmakers, lighting designers, docents, and if you do that successfully, you're able to create things that are immersive, and and I would say that some of that early experience, certainly helped to inform, the approach that we take as an agency at Proverb.
Sure. Okay. I kind of almost want to talk about that for a long time, but that's really interesting. So that kind of makes sense given some of these questions I'm gonna ask you then about getting into
Yeah.
to Proverb. Well, first of all, just tactically, so you all were founded in 1997.
That's right. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And,
Congratulations. Go ahead.
yeah, it was kind of a funny story. The company had grown really quickly, and I was always freelancing in addition to whatever my job was at the time, because it was a way of being able to build your portfolio. You had a little more creative control, and I had done some work for an agency out of Bermuda that was working on the Bacardi Tornado World Championship. Bacardi tornadoes are a class of catamarans. They're kind of like the
Okay.
snowboarders of catamarans.
I thought I knew that, but I
And
wasn't going to try to. Okay.
yeah, and I wasn't making a lot of money at the time. I think I was making like $43,000 a year, and
Okay.
over 5 or 6 weeks, I made 8 grand, and so
Hey.
which was a big deal to me. I think it was the first time I had like 10 grand in the bank, and so
Right.
I then approached my boss. It was a Friday afternoon. I was like, hey Judy, I hear that there might be layoffs, and she goes, "Oh no, there's nothing to it." And I said, "Well, if that should change, I was wondering if you consider laying me off." And she goes, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." And she brings me into her office, and I was not in a management role. I wasn't negotiating very much at all at the time. But she pulls open her drawer and she pulls out a spreadsheet, and there's my name in a cell and a number next to it. And in the moment, and it was just kind of I'm not sure exactly what got into me, but I was like, "Hey, I was wondering if we could get to this kind of a number instead." And she says, "Well, let me talk to, you know, Joe at the time, who was the owner,
Yeah.
and we'll get back to you Monday." I come in on Monday. She says, "Joe agreed to everything. You can finish up in 2 weeks." And I was like, "Cool. Can I have my
Wow.
computer?" And because I didn't own a computer at the time, and she was like, "Oh yeah, sure." And so I sat up in my living room, in Jamaica Plain with not much of a business plan beyond, do good work and try to find some more. And, that Monday I called that agency again and said, "Hey, I'm available."
Right.
But that was kind of a model for the
Okay.
business that worked pretty well for about 7 years. I mean, I was able to, in the first year, land some engagements with the MIT Media Lab and with
Okay.
what became a James Beard Award-winning restaurant. I mean, it was just really interesting work.
Nice.
And after then started to experiment with assembling teams.
That's excellent. That's a great story. And so, staff-wise, how big is Proverb today?
So we're a team of about 30.
Okay.
That includes, I think it's 24 of us who are full-time, including, consultants and freelancers and
Sure.
whatever.
It's a nice size. Okay. All right. So we framed some of that out. And by the way, I should definitely mention congratulations because I saw, I think fairly recently, landed a spot on the Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing companies. Congratulations.
No, thank you. Yeah, we've been really, really pleased. We've got a killer team here,
Nice.
and and that's really allowed us to be able to, secure all kinds of meaningful engagements. Working with entities as varied as the city of Boston and the Bermuda Tourism Authority and
Right.
Mass General Brigham and the Moffett Center in Tampa and and many
Okay.
others. So.
Awesome. Yeah, and I just happened to see that on LinkedIn right before where I was like, oh, I have to bring that up. But I want to get into as far as services. So, and we're certainly going to have links, if folks that are watching go to Proverb site and you'll see creative brand experiences, for example. But specifically in this list of services, you'll see strategy, branding, content, advertising. But one I wanted to talk about a little bit was placemaking, because while I understood that concept when I saw that, that's not something you see, listed from a whole lot of agencies, at least in my own experience. Talk to us about that, because I think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so at Proverb, I'll say a few things. One is that we're big believers that powerful brands are always connected to purpose-driven organizations, and so everything we do is in service of that. And and just about all the work that we do really lives at this intersection between research and strategy, design and storytelling, purpose-driven places, and a real sense of belonging and vibrancy.
Okay.
And so if you think about the places we inhabit, and just using a few architectural examples, if you think about that tall buildings can inspire a sense of awe, or low lights can create a sense of intimacy, or
Sure.
if it's a bakery, or that smell can be really inviting and things along those lines. And so what we're oftentimes tasked with doing is sort of working either with developers or owners or, people who actually, um, run spaces to really look at how we can help to make them more meaningful.
Okay.
And that can, take many different forms. It's, the same strategy, that might be delivered to support, the leasing or marketing activities around a new building, if that's actually crafted at a very early stage, can help to inform design decisions.
Yeah.
So if we figure out, what this place is about, who it's for, understanding sort of what that competitive landscape might look like, looking at, a suite of values, that it might want to embody, or a series of tactics, that it might want to deploy to the people who actually, occupy that space. We can serve that up in such a way that it actually helps to inform architectural decisions, interior design decisions, landscape design, a style of hospitality. And those same 100,000 decisions are going to be made whether we come in at the beginning or at the end. But what we've found is by getting involved at that early stage, we can actually help to compete, we can help to deliver a competitive advantage, not just while a space is brand new, but 5 years from now or 10 years from now. And so we tend to bring that same approach to, whether we're working with a municipality that might be looking to drive a new narrative to support economic development. We've done this a lot in cities across the country where the story isn't obvious,
Yeah.
as to, why someone would want to locate a company at a particular site, or why someone would choose to invest or want to live. But we've also been able to do this, in other unexpected sectors as well, whether those are, culture institutions or, travel and tourism campaigns or what have you.
Yeah, and I think that's what was so interesting to me when you looked at all the different, as I was doing a little bit of research and saw that, on your site, for example, you've already mentioned a lot of it, whether it's real estate developers, actual cities, hotels, museums, architects, the list goes on a little bit in terms of all the different types of work that you've done. But in one article, and I can't forgive me which one it is, they threw out that you're a destination agency. And I'm like, well, they're a lot more than that. So do you ever, from a business development standpoint, is that ever an issue? Because with some agencies it is, right? They're kind of like,
Yeah.
what exactly are we here? And so does that ever?
Yeah. So it's a great question. And, part of how we got to this point was, if you looked at, who we were as a company 15 years ago or so, and you went to our website, we were very much generalists, and we could work on many different things, I think, at an exceptionally high level. And, part of our origin story as a company is as a design firm. So we always execute at a very high level. And, while we had worked on things, as diverse as, a boutique hotel or, a tooth whitener or, an environmental justice organization, what we found was that oftentimes we were walking into the room and we were trying to convince people that we could do the thing.
Right.
And
Yes.
if you're not seen as an industry expert in one thing, oftentimes you're competing with, someone's brother or sister-in-law,
Sure.
or the expert, or what have you. So we made this conscientious decision to really double down on this idea of place, and to really singularly focus on one sector of the commercial real estate space, and that was luxury multifamily. And
Okay.
and so we were able to take experience that we had working on boutique hotels or hot restaurants. And even though for us that seemed like a fairly natural expansion, the reality is that you're in a room where you might have a visionary developer and perhaps a very sophisticated property manager, but you also have representation from institutional capital, where they're really there to make sure the deal doesn't blow up, and they want to know if you've done this,
Right.
20 times before.
Yeah.
So it took a lot, but what we found was, getting to that first one, took, 4 or 5 at bats, and,
Did
we
it? Okay.
quickly went from one to three, and went from three to more than 100 with that particular property manager, and
Okay.
so we've been able to kind of grow that sector of the business. We've also been able to grow sort of into adjacent um, verticals within the commercial real estate space. And so we might work on a high performance lab building. We might work on, a new neighborhood that's being conceived and
Sure.
delivered alongside, working with, developers and operators of housing. And so I would say that, that was certainly, that certainly sort of increased the trajectory, of the firm, and it kind of
Okay.
allowed us to be able to walk into a room as an expert
Exactly.
at one thing, and and we've been able to sort of take that experience and parlay that into other categories. There's a lot of overlap between you know, selling a new neighborhood and selling a destination city. And you're
Sure.
looking at this location through many different lenses, and the research component of it tends to be much more robust. But the filter that we use at Proverb, which is really a deep dive on the place, we do a deep dive on sort of the consumers that we're looking to win and influence. We do a
Okay.
deep dive on the competitive landscape, and then we look at culture. And the culmination of that is what we call a brand truth, which really this underlying idea, that we want to have fuel, any interaction with the brand, whether it's something we control or not.
Okay. I love that. Yeah, I think for agencies watching, marketers that are watching as well, if you want to, especially agencies, if you want to see a good example of, I hate the authenticity is so overused these days. Oh my gosh, but I'm using it. Sorry, but I think that as far as that purpose driven, it's interesting how over the last, especially I think right before COVID and after, I see, I'm not naming names, but I see, and you don't have to comment, but I've seen firms kind of do what happened with agencies in healthcare over a decade ago, where a lot of agencies jumping on that train that really kind of had no business doing it. And I think it seems to be the same with kind of purpose driven, where it's like, we're going to throw that in the mix because it makes us look better. But you see that none of that's really happening. It's just kind of a nice little catchphrase. They think it's going to, help them maybe get in the door or make them look better. And I do think you all do a nice job without like screaming it to the rooftops. Not that you're necessarily even trying to do it. So if agencies are looking, and you're kind of struggling with your identity, I would go to Proverb, go to their site and go to Daren's LinkedIn, because we'll put that there too. Kudos, because I think you're walking that walk in that way. So
Oh, thank you.
I find it interesting. But so let's jump in, because Boston plays a part, especially from the outside perspective, looking at your site and you personally on things like LinkedIn. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that rebranding campaign, which I believe was in 2021. Pretty amazing that you're working with the mayor, with CVB, with NBC10 and other folks like that, a host of others, on the all-inclusive Boston campaign. I mean, how did that get started? Was that you reaching out, or that came to you? Some of both?
Yeah. So the city did something really bold in the height of COVID. So this is,
Yeah, right.
the early fall of 2020. They put out an RFP, and what they were
Okay.
looking to do was to support a safe reopening of the city. But they also wanted to support an equitable recovery, and that language, really allowed us to be able to partner with two other really amazing organizations. One was
Okay.
called Phillips Communications. The other is Meet Boston, which is the region's destination marketing organization. And part of what was really interesting about that work, because Boston's a city that really does have it all. It's got a hip food scene, and it's got historic sites and cultural landmarks, and an innovative tech and healthcare hub. And it's a city that really is as scenic and walkable as its shoreline is, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
but one of the things that we wound up doing as a part of that exercise, we wound up surveying about 3,000 likely travelers across North America,
Wow.
as well as parts of Europe. We also surveyed about 1,000 residents of the city. And what we found, were a few things, as we were looking at, how do we look at how we can both reset, and encourage new travelers to come and experience the city firsthand, were that, some of the perceptions of the city were getting in the way,
Yeah.
whether it was, the city having a reputation of being full of pretentious Ivy Leaguers or, aggressive sports fans or crazy
Right.
drivers, right? And those things certainly don't read like a welcome mat. But the other was that, when we looked at sort of a larger, more insidious issue, the city was also perceived as being, on one hand, unwelcoming, and on the other hand, even racist. And so, what we were able to then go back and test was, looking at the ways in which we could, address some of the negative perceptions head on, sort of introduce people to what the city has actually become. And then when we went back and we actually, suggested, well, did you know how, vibrant, the city actually is, or understanding sort of what an interesting cultural scene it has, or that there are 140 languages now spoken in the city of Boston.
Cool.
That it's a neighborhood, that it's a city that isn't just, contained between what happens between Fenway Park and the Freedom Trail, that it's 23
Right.
neighborhoods. Like that those things, really, raised interest, and so even if the city had a high level of favorability, despite everything that I said, when we then went back and said, well, and we looked at about 30 different areas of potential interest in terms of things that people might want to do.
Okay.
When we then said, well, can you describe the cuisine in Boston? Can you describe sort of what this culture is that you're looking to experience? What are some of these cultural institutions that you want to try to visit? That there was a significant gap, and so we really saw an opportunity to reintroduce the city and everything that it's become, and and really wanted to both present the well-known attractions with a real spirit of hospitality, but also introducing sort of our vibrant small business community, introducing sort of our BIPOC communities, our LGBTQ plus, people who might be living with disabilities, the vibrance of the art scene, but also the working artists, that make this city so special. And so all-inclusive Boston was really an outgrowth of that. One of the things I'm really proud of is that, it's a campaign that now 3 different mayoral administrations have gotten behind.
Oh, wow.
And, and have really seen the benefit. And, even, some of our major employers now use the all-inclusive campaign when they make offer letters, to really ensure
That's
that,
awesome.
that anyone that they might be recruiting has, a sense of, what the city has become and aren't just relying on, film or, consumer products or, or to shape their opinions.
That's amazing. Yeah, so this is going well beyond just a kind of a rebrand campaign.
Yeah.
And definitely the link will be there, but all-inclusive, BOS, allinclusiveboss.com, definitely recommend you go, because it's just, quite frankly, it's done really well. I mean, just if you knew nothing else coming in, the work really stands out.
Boston. It's the city you know. The city of history. The city of champions. But we are also a city of people. A city of resilient, passionate, determined, loving people who have overcome odds and stared down challenges. A city of cobblestones and corner stores, mom and pops, 5-star shops, unwavering classics. This is a city where new voices are emerging, determined to work harder, dream bigger, and become stronger. Whatever you seek, whoever you are, there's a place for you here. An unexpected adventure, a fresh flavor, a sound you've never heard before. Our doors are open. Our tables are set. This is Boston, and we are all inclusive. Join us at allinclusiveboss.com.
Congratulations on that. And it went in multiple phases, correct? Or is it? I mean, it's obviously still vibrant and there.
Yeah. So there've been two major investments.
Okay.
Or actually, there have been three major investments that the city has made in the campaign, as well as it lives on Meet Boston as well, and
Okay.
and
Nice.
we're hopeful that that there may be additional into the future. It's also
Okay.
won a fair amount of of recognition. So it's been recognized from everything from the Anthem Awards to World Travel Awards and Shorties and things along those lines. There are a couple of
That's
case study
fantastic.
videos we produced, and I'll make sure to send them your way on the other side of this. So.
Yeah, do please. Yeah, I think we would definitely like to get those posted as well. That's fantastic. Let's continue with the Boston theme for a minute. And you mentioned already the office space, and I wanted just to talk about that a little bit. There was maybe more than one, but there was a link to an article in the Boston Globe that certainly we'll post. But for viewers, you purchased office space, as you mentioned, in South End. And has that been over a year ago?
Yeah, it's been a few years now.
That's been a few. Okay.
But inside of COVID, and
Yeah.
and we're kind of a scrappy company in a lot of ways, right? And so our old office space was in an old funky mill building that, if you squinted your eyes, sort of felt like you might be in the Lower East Side.
Okay.
Alongside other creative firms and working artists and light manufacturing and what have you.
Okay.
And it also had shared bathrooms, and we got maybe 3 months into COVID, and it was just clear that there was no way we were going to be able to bring this team back to that space.
It's not gonna work.
And ask people to do that, just given all of the uncertainty,
Right.
And
right.
so we started looking around, at potentially sort of renting elsewhere, but we also decided that we would look around at what we might be able to purchase, and so we were able to buy a storefront in a really attractive corner of the South End that has its own bathrooms.
Just
And,
right.
and what felt like a little bit of a discount, just given where we were at that time. So it's been a space that has worked really well for us. It also kind of gave us the license to think much more about the role of an office, and that I would argue that that the office is no longer a requirement. It's much more of a destination, and
Yeah.
sort of thinking about it as less of a container for everything that you do, but really sort of what is its function in your company. And and I can't imagine that we'll ever go back to 100% in person, given the work that we do. But it's been
Yeah.
a really helpful space to both ensure that we're all collectively on the same page. I think it's
Yeah.
been great in terms of sort of maintaining a level of rapport, particularly for newer people who've come into the organization, and in
Sure.
some cases they're here to make changes, and it's really difficult to make changes if you don't have trust, and
Yeah.
it can take a lot longer if you're doing it just through a screen. And so for us, it's it feels like it's working.
Good.
People are in a little more now that it's the fall than we might have been a year ago, but so far it's worked out.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I love the way you put that, because I think if more employers treated it, as you mentioned it, as a destination rather than, I love the way you, as I said, like the container, and this is a place that you have to go. because you're right, it's not, I don't think it's ever going to go back. So I think that attitude is got to be more helpful for the employees, and especially newer employees. That's really got to be attractive. So I love that. I'm going to steal it from you. But so
I stole it too.
okay, good. Well, that's fine. Well, we'll give you credit for it. Here, we're going to give you credit, at least now. And I wanted to also point out, we talk about on your site and kind of walking that walk, as I mentioned. There's also the focus on DEI, and I saw that you'll be speaking in Boston. I think it's on 9/21 as part of the Boston Business Journal panel on the state of diversity in business. Tell us a little about that. I mean, is this kind of the first time that you've done this? And forgive me if I didn't see that, on stage, or has this been kind of part of what you've done here for a little while now?
Yeah, I mean, so, I know we call it DE&I now,
Yeah.
but I sort of feel like, we've got 25 years of receipts.
Yes.
Of the things that we've been
This
doing.
is the label now. Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Absolutely.
So I think that almost everything that we've done in some ways shares some overlap with these
Makes
things.
sense.
I would even say that, part of our origin story as a company, like I got really tired of working in design studios where at that time the uniform was, you had to wear, Doc Martens and biker jackets.
Right.
In order to, and severe glasses, in order for someone to take you seriously as a designer, and and listen to REM and I don't know, Depeche Mode and Annie Lennox or what,
Sure.
and I listened to all those things too, and
Yeah.
I went to art school. I've got Doc Martens, you know what I mean? But it wasn't.
I was going to say, I do
all
too.
of me.
So.
Yeah,
Right.
and so you just got, like, for me, I got really tired of like not being able to play my music in the studio.
Right.
And so I was always, listening to my headphones. And I think in some ways that experience was kind of isolating, and it sort of felt like,
Sure.
you were able to bring this part of yourself, but you weren't able to bring these other parts to yourself,
Okay.
to this environment. I would say that, for us, given the work that we do as a company, and we've worked everywhere from San Francisco to Senegal, that it would almost be impossible to do those things if we didn't really kind of lean on, our team to be able to bring more of their experiences to the table.
Sure.
So I think that there were things that we've learned over the years. Almost a third of our team, grew up in a home where another language might have been spoken, or, that you might be foreign born like I am, or that, that many of our teammates take public transportation to work, or just
Sure.
other types of things that you can look at that, that might not necessarily be the obvious things that one thinks about when they're thinking about DE&I, but those things are front and center for us. Even that, for most of the history of the firm, most of the team have identified as women.
Okay.
So it's not entirely new to be talking about these things.
Sure.
I think that, we've kind of been in a really unique position to be able to take on really complicated projects, like, the Boston campaign, which I just talked about,
Yeah.
was a travel campaign, but, we would be remiss if we ignored the fact that the communities that make up the backbone for travel and hospitality were also the same communities that were experiencing COVID at a disproportionate level. And so if they are interested in equitable recovery, we can't ignore that. If we're working, on the reposition for the island of Bermuda, those, it's an island that has had a lot of success for many, many years.
Sure.
And has been sort of a real market leader. And, some of the things that have fueled some of that success, may not necessarily be the same things that fuel success, into the future at the same levels, and
Yeah.
so if we're going to do a reset, how do we do that in a way that's as smart, as it can be? But, these themes show up in the commercial real estate work that we're doing. It's, if you're going to build a new neighborhood,
Okay.
then how do you actually ensure that, it's as impactful for, as many different kinds of people, as it can be? Or if we're working with, a cultural institution like the Boston Museum of Fine Arts or New England Aquarium, then like how do you speak to a wide cross section, a wide cross section,
Right.
of constituents, or if we're working with New England Aquarium and we're thinking about climate change and ocean conservation, how do we
Oh,
actually sort of talk about those things in a way that's meaningful, to a broad cross section, so, I think that there are things that we've learned, through the work that we do that I think, they allow us to bring a pretty unique lens, to really large, complicated
right.
problems that our clients are looking to have us help solve.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and that's what you do. That you get that deep into areas that maybe that's not the first thing someone would think of in real estate, for example. But that example that you just gave makes perfect sense, and I think that can be hard. And again, because we're a business development firm, but thinking about how it could be tough to get that story out of the gate, like at the top of the funnel. But I think what you all have done, the language that I've seen, I think you managed to do a pretty good job with it. But then also I've got to think that a lot of these companies are coming to you because of that work that you've done. I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's
For
yeah, I
that
mean,
reason.
we've had some good fortune,
That's good.
where these themes uh, have become much more into focus,
Okay.
on the other side of COVID. Um, but I would also add that particularly the real estate work, which is inherently a space that is risk averse for very good reason,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
If I'm going to dig a giant hole and I'm going to put hundreds of millions of dollars into it, I want to make
Fair.
sure that I see it again.
Right.
Uh, and so, what we've been able to do is to work on projects that, uh, particularly the ones where the story isn't obvious. And if the
There you go.
brand is really wedded to that product and it's creative and it outperforms the market, right?
Sure.
People tend to pay attention to that, and so, if you are able to, line up two, three, four, 70 of these,
Right, right.
then you're able to kind of show some causation in terms of, the role that that brand strategy and that brand identity, has helped to, has helped, that location or that building, to outperform the marketplace. And people tend to pay attention to that
Of course. Yeah.
alongside anything that we might have to say.
Sure, absolutely. And you already mentioned this, and maybe you answered the question too, but I just thought as I was looking through and doing a little bit of research that you did work with Bermuda and that you were born and raised there. Is that
That's right.
correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, which is fascinating. And so I guess to have that connection, which had to be one of the reasons why, but how did you already, I think maybe you said you had worked at an agency there already. Is that how you got into that
Yeah.
work?
So
Okay.
yeah. So I interned at an agency while I was
Okay.
in college,
Gotcha.
and I was born in Bermuda. My dad went to college later in life, so we moved to Boston when I was 3 months old. We
Okay.
then for him to study music composition at Berklee College of Music,
Oh, nice.
uh, and then we moved back to Bermuda. And so all of my schooling occurred there. I came to Boston to go to college.
Oh, wow.
Decided to stay one more year, and one thing kind of led to another. But the island did something that I felt was fairly visionary inside of COVID, and there was new leadership at the tourism authority where you know the obvious thing would have been to just instantly create a new campaign, or to even double down on the existing one and
Okay.
think about like how do you just create fresher ads. What they wanted to do was to actually do a reset because they actually felt like there was a lot of uncertainty in terms of what is the brand of Bermuda, what does it represent. If they asked locals, they might get fairly varied answers. And if they went out to the marketplace, the answers were just as varied. And they came to us with this question, and it was really to what degree proximity, uh, you know, to what degree proximity should be central to that new identity of Bermuda, and sort of how do we tell this proximity story? If you look at the fact that you can get to Bermuda from New York City, or Washington D.C., and Boston, in 90 minutes or less. Um, what we found through a lot of the market research, that as much as proximity is important, that proximity really only is important if you're seen as attractive and convenient.
Sure.
And we actually found that there were stronger levers that the island could really lean on or pull upon in order to tell that story. And so, when we looked at, other places that you could get to from New York City in 90 minutes that felt as far away as a trip to Bermuda, which is
Right.
really, a unique destination, we looked at places like Montreal and Quebec, and that those places really delivered an experience that was far away. It was under 2 hours.
Interesting.
The nearest
All right.
Caribbean island is over four, or 4 to 5. And and Bermuda is this really interesting, successful, island destination. In Bermuda, locals are as likely to be having a great time or an even better time than most tourists. And so, how do we actually start to unlock local knowledge and know-how, and really help travelers, to experience what Bermudians love about where they live. And that was a significant shift from, going to market being seen, largely as a country club, and where it's a much
Sure.
more controlled experience. And, in Bermuda, it's a place that you really can roam freely. And there's a warm, vibrant community that's really there to receive you.
That's awesome.
And so Lost Yet Found is the new campaign that came about as a result of that.
Okay. Fantastic. Yeah, you guys are covering a lot of different areas here. This is awesome. Couple more. I did just want to get into, because again, doing a little bit of research, you've been an overseer at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston there for 15 plus years. I know obviously your education makes sense, but is that fair to assume, is that a passion of yours, and the fact you've been doing this for quite a while?
Yeah. So I've been on the board of advisors for 15 years. In the Museum of Fine Arts Boston is, one of, I think it's one of 11 encyclopedic museums in the world, which
Okay.
means that it, is attempting to, collect sort of the best of all cultures,
Right.
across many different time periods, and so inside of that time, I've been able to play many different roles. It's been everything from, helping to advise on, sort of marketing and how it goes,
Sure.
into the marketplace, being able to, advise on, collections and stewardship and
Oh,
things
wow.
along
Okay.
those lines. But also working with other cultural institutions here in the city. So I'm also the vice chair of Massachusetts College of Art and Design, and I've
Nice.
been involved in that institution for some time. I'm also on the board of Facing History and Ourselves, which develops curricula for high schoolers to help them to understand how to negotiate difference,
Oh, wow.
across many different cultures, and some others. At Proverb, we're interested in not just you know being a healthy and vibrant company, but really also how we can help to make the communities that we help to influence a bit better.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm glad you added the others too. I'm not sure when you sleep, but that really is impressive. No, that's awesome.
Yeah, it helps if you're
so-
a vampire.
Yeah, right, exactly. And they're cool. So, one final question, and you've been so gracious with your time, Darren. Really appreciate it. But because we have, again, marketers that will see these videos along with agencies, the last question here is, so if you could give one piece of advice to a marketer or a potential client of yours to make the agency relationship more effective, what would that be?
I would say being really clear about your why.
Okay.
There's a professor from Harvard Business School who I'm a big fan of, Francis Fry, who wrote a book called Uncommon Service. And, much of the argument of the book is that if you really want to be world class at something, oftentimes the tendency is to say, we're good at this, we need to get good at these other things. And her argument is that if you're good at this, focus on getting even better at that thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Or two things, and learning to be okay with being either good enough or perhaps even sucking at some other things. But what will happen, or what can happen over time, is that you get to be known for doing a particular thing, and I think that's really important, at the start of new relationships, whether that is sort of that entree, or that first touch point as to why someone will want to show up at Proverb. But it's also something that I think you can lean on, as you continue to service a piece of business, and grow a relationship, as to, how you can really help and, how you can ensure that client, is being well served.
Fair enough. I like it. Daren Bascome, Proverb, thank you so much for being a part of our series. It's been great.
Great stuff. No, thank you, Lee. This was a treat.
Awesome. Great. Thanks so much.